Come again? You know I don't speak Spanish. In English, please. Huh? You pooped in the refrigerator.
Hello, Jedediah. Hello, Charlie. I didn't know we were speaking. Sure we're speaking, Jedediah. You're fired.
Pete, the personal rancor reflected in that remark I don't intend to dignify with comment. But I would like to address your general attitude of hopeless negativism.
Good. Well, drive carefully, because the life you save might be your own. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Mrs. Lippman's family.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? Hi. Oh, hi.
I'm fine.
Hi.
Oh,
How
were
are
you talking to them?
Oh, hi. How are you?
Hi.
Hi. Hello. Hi, how are you? I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are the
Cinemaniacs. They can tell that we only have 8 movies to talk about today.
Can they?
Because we're like kind of shuffling and
Have
dancing.
they cracked the code?
Yeah.
The key
Probably,
is that we
most
haven't
likely.
already started talking about the films
Right, that's
out
true.
of the gate.
If it's been 30 seconds and we're still rambling.
So it was one locally in the theater this weekend. We're setting you up. And Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola on video.
Yes.
And whatever else we crammed into our busy lives.
Yep.
So if you would care to begin.
I'll be happy to. It's been a while since we've had magicalness. I can't even see where the camera is there. I'm being blinded by the light. And if you'd like to write a song about that, anyway. Magicalness abounds, but not over in England. It's not just in England, it's all over the place. And it just happens to be right now that we're going to check out some things in New England. You're a writer, and you're a brand new guy, and you're checking out, doing some research and things like that, and you want to make sure that everybody knows about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Boy, didn't that look exciting?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be exciting. I was bored out of my skull.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
now
well,
I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I like the movies, and I've enjoyed the movies as they've transpired and grown and gotten darker. So I enjoyed that part. But one thing, fantasy as a genre, fantasy isn't my cup of tea. I'll be interested to find out. I know a few friends whose kids in particular are big Harry Potter fans, and they just love this. But I was noticing, and my 16-year-old went along with me, and he and I, on a scale of 0 to 10, both gave this a 3, because we thought it was, and without provocation or anything. My younger son said this as well. Said it was just boring. We didn't care about the characters. It felt very forced. Here's an opportunity to have lots of super crazy things going on. All it was this guy chasing after Eddie Redmayne, and I'm sure I guess they found out like a couple months ago that Rowling has 5 more of these planned. So everybody in this must just be happy as a clam, because they're set for the next 10 years,
Well, unless
movie-wise.
this tanks.
Oh, yeah, right, this is going to tank. But it was interesting. I went to a late show, a 9 o'clock show on Friday, so it'd been out for a while, and it was about 3/4 packed, but older people, not older as in, octogenarian, but 30s, 40s, 50s, and not a lot of kids. And I didn't hear a lot. I heard a couple of laughs. And other than that, I just found Fantastic Beasts to be sort of plodding and trying so hard to create either a new world or to endear audiences to this world in New York, so that when the next 5 come along, everybody loves them. There was one fun surprise at the end that I really enjoyed, and I'm sure they're going to continue that. But overall, I thought Fantastic Beasts was just kind of plodding and boring.
Now, here's one of the rare occasions where we disagree on this fine program, on this august program, even though
It's
August
November.
was a couple months ago.
Yes, it's been on bump.
So I liked it.
Okay.
I I didn't see this anything as a cynical cash grab because Warner has been desperate for another Harry Potter franchise.
Oh, yeah.
Hollywood has been desperate for another Harry Potter since it wrapped up, and you get Percy Jackson, you get all these other, magical kids movies where they're like, we can do 5 of these, and people are like, maybe one's enough. It's ditto for the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games ends, and everybody's
Star
trying to
Wars
do
is
this.
coming up, so
there's that.
we'll have that going.
So they can remake another Star Wars movie. So I figured this, originally was based on essentially a guidebook. It wasn't even a narrative book, but it was expanded, I believe, into a stage play upon which this was based.
And my understanding is that these aren't books. She's not writing books first. She's writing them as
films,
screenplays.
which is fine by me because I don't read the book. So hey. So I liked it. I loved the sense of time of where it was set. It was set in the 20s, which means box office gold. It was a cast entirely of adults, box office gold, and consequently there were no kids in the theater when I went there, which is fine actually. But it was interesting because the audience I was with was again predominantly older than me, much older than me, which was interesting because it's nice when Hollywood makes movies that appeal to grown-ups once a month or once every 3 months.
So where's that demographic coming from, do you think? Because
Well,
I was thinking
it's
that
interesting,
too.
'cause I assumed
Is it
this was the
parents
Harry-
of kids who were Harry Potter fans?
Maybe. I assumed it was the Harry Potter crowd, but it doesn't.
Right.
It didn't seem to be when I saw it. And word was that the film was not doing crazy business this weekend.
Right.
Including, I saw photos online of people who had seen this at another theater locally, not in town, and it was also very sparse on opening night.
Really?
Although that's funny, we find around here. We can blab about semi-unrelated things. A lot of times we'll go to opening night to a film here just to get it out of the way, and I always expect, the crowds are going to be crazy because the hardcores, and most of the time there's hardly anybody there on opening night. So apparently this is slightly underperforming so far from what I've read because it's, in my head, it has a brain in its head and it's for grown-ups, so oops. I had thought it had a really nice sense of wonder and whimsy. I really liked the effects and the worlds it created and when you first step into the Ministry of Magic or whatever it's called. Just the interior architecture is really cool. It's really retro.
The
big
effects
city
were
stuff.
unbelievable, and the
Effects look
production
great.
design was spectacular.
I chose to see it in 3D, and the 3D was really well utilized, which is rare. I wondered if I'm like, did I clean my glasses or something? Suddenly, a 3D movie is using 3D in really cool ways. I like the characters overall.
To address
Yes?
that comment, there were a couple of moments, because we saw it in 2D. I tend to prefer the 2D just because I find that, as you say, the 3D isn't used properly. And there were a few moments that the 2D, it was so obvious that this was done for 3D that stood out. So it's kind of, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. I don't know.
It's like Dr. Tongue's 3D House of Pancakes. It's like, here, take this pen.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So I had a good time with this. It was long. It was 2 hours plus. It didn't really feel too long to me like a lot of films do lately. Clearly, it is setting up more films. You were saying, you didn't care about the characters very much. Yeah, I mean, the Eddie Redmayne character is very genteel and slight. His American sidekick, the equivalent of a muggle in this film, was far less annoying than I expected he would be.
I checked my watch. For the first hour, there was no conflict whatsoever. And I mean, I think the length benefits from that. But I was sitting there for an entire hour waiting, okay, is anything troublesome going to happen in this movie? And then eventually it did.
I thought it was interesting that the American character, who I refer to as the, now let me get this straight character, was very little of that, thankfully.
Okay.
I mean, there was 1 or 2 moments where I kind of smiled because he was like, you're telling me that suitcase, okay,
Because he's the muggle, right?
For those of you who've come in late, he's going to prompt the exposition in the film. But otherwise, I had a good time with it. The audience I saw it with laughed a lot.
Really?
Actually, I mean, I was amused by certain points. They were laughing a lot throughout, so the people were really into
Mine
it.
noticeably didn't, so that's interesting.
You always get the sour audience.
I do. That's what it must be from me. So
I don't know. Maybe they had a bad batch of popcorn or butterbeer or something like that. At any rate, I'm really curious to see how this does. I am curious to hear from like big Harry Potter fans to see what they think, because this is the same world, and they make verbal references to some people and places. And I wonder how far they'll get into these before they start weaving them in. And
they have tinges of the music coming in, and I didn't know if I wanted to be upset about that or not. Leave it alone and let that be Harry. Give me a different theme. But it was fun. I mean, that part was fun.
So, so you have a split decision on Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Up next, if I may,
you should, because I did that one.
Let me just consult the text over here. Okay, here we go. We have, I just had to look down for just a moment, just to center myself for this. We have a young female going through the throes of adolescence in a school that is neither low nor medium, and she is on the edge of 17.
So, not available here, but I thought that looked pretty funny. Woody's comment. No, my understanding is that I guess Woody isn't in it all that much, and that the kids are really the complete stars of the whole thing. But again, if it's around, I would have actually traveled to see that, and maybe we'll see it at our local King Cinemas one of these days.
Once again, presenting that as informational for those of you who watch outside the area, or for those of you like me who drive to see movies sometimes.
I do too occasionally.
I mean, like us.
Yes.
So, up next is a film that you will elucidate and emancipate and proclamate about.
Miles Teller, he's given up the drumsticks and stretching all over the place, and he's decided that it's time for him to be a world champion boxer. He practices and everything like that. It's Rocky Balboa all over the place, and he's really good at it, and then has a tragic, horrible accident, and he has to come back for it. He's going to work at it. He's going to do everything he can to achieve his goal. He's going to bleed for this.
Ice cold Coca-Cola for everybody at the refreshment counter now.
I don't know what my life has been like, because that was not Trolls, for those of you who saw the underneath bit. But, so anyway, another public service announcement, because at least I didn't see this.
Nor did I. I mean, I saw the trailer.
It's out and available. And
perhaps it's Trolls 2,
it
Bleed
could be
for this.
That
Taking
might be
a grittier turn in the second
might be
Trolls
it.
film. So I would say that's all that's playing locally at Keene Cinemas. And when I do say that, I'm talking about, of course, Fantastic Beasts.
Yes.
We will discuss what is coming next week to Keene Cinemas next week. And that'll be at least 2 films that we know of.
Yes.
And they open on Tuesday. But we're not going to tell you the titles because, frankly, you have to work a little harder for that. Up next is that which is available to everyone currently on home video of one form or another, currently or tomorrow being Tuesday, but as we say and love to say, if you watch this after Tuesday, there it is. So first up, we have a sequel to a very, very popular animated children's and or family film about little swimmy fishies in the ocean, and what happens when a little swimmy fishy in the ocean who has short-term memory problems or long-term memory problems or generally just memory problems, I don't remember, I got problems, is trying to find herself and her family and other things that may or may not be similar to the first film, this film is entitled Hi, How Are Ya? Finding Dory.
Oh, they're really biting today, Zorek.
Not good. How interesting. Because once again, I'm going to come down on some stuff. I thought this was not terribly good.
Oh!
I thought it was basically a search and replace Finding Nemo for Finding Dory. She's looking for her parents, and that's different than Finding Nemo was, parents looking for the kid. But strangely enough, and when I went to see this, in particular when I'm finding I'm not enjoying a film, I do my best to try to, if I can't get into the film itself, which usually if I'm not enjoying it I can't, I try to be aware of the audience around me and see if is it just me. And I remember seeing this with a lot of kids, and they weren't laughing out loud at this. I remember a little kid way down in front, laughing uproariously about something. She sounded like she was maybe 2 or 3. But I don't recall a lot of laughs from this thing. I certainly expected, and is this my fault? Probably. But again, it's 3D, and what a tremendous opportunity to have great 3D effects. And I remember being very disenchanted with that. And sadly enough, Ellen DeGeneres, one of my favorite actresses, terrific comedian, and I loved the character of Dory in Nemo, so maybe she's a supporting character. But what was unique and fun, in my opinion, in Finding Nemo, with Dory's just kind of quirkiness and forgetfulness and silly approach, I found really annoying in this one. It was so constant, and maybe it was because she was there throughout the whole thing. I found myself really getting annoyed at Dory, which isn't good for your main character. And so I was really disappointed in Finding Dory.
You're just cold and heartless.
I must be.
You're a cold, heartless fish. I never saw Finding Nemo until fairly late in the game. I didn't see it actually until they re-released it in 3D a few years ago.
Okay.
So it's fresher in my mind than it probably would have been otherwise. And I thought it was okay. I'm not a huge fan of kids' movies. I more often than not, I like the ones we have to watch for the show, but I never willingly go see them if I would have to.
Throw a question at you.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
about old Disney kids movies? Pinocchio, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Well, I mean,
same thing. Just wondering.
It's fond memories from when I was a little kid watching those. I don't really rewatch any of those.
Right.
So it's hard to say. I liked them when I saw them, and I have fond memories of
Fair
them.
enough.
So Finding Dory, it was fine for me, but it was clearly the same thing all over again. I think for little kids, they won't mind. It won't mind for anybody with a short-term memory loss problem. They won't mind. It'll be new every time they watch it. It had some funny moments. It had a good action sequence involving a truck toward the end of it that was kind of cool. But otherwise, it's a movie pretty much for little kids or people who are like such a fan of this world that you get to spend a little bit more time with some of the characters. Always nice to hear Albert Brooks' voice in anything. Yeah. And it's, it's a little touching, I think, for parents or people who are older than a little kid. There are some things about, love lost, time spent, memory, all that kind of stuff that may tug at the heartstrings a little bit. But otherwise, I was sort of in a panic while that trailer was just playing, trying to remember this movie and what I thought of it. So I can tell you what I think of Finding Dory. So my summation for the court of Finding Dory.
Yes.
So up next, speaking of finding things.
Finding something, Nicolas Cage is a down-home country guy working at the store and giving everybody advice. He's been a little fed up with America's inability to find that evil, notorious henchman, Osama bin Laden. He's decided he's going to take it upon himself to go over to the Middle East and find that guy because he is an army of one. One. Just one. It's only Nicolas Cage. He's an army of one. He has no one else with him. It's not like Mark's going along with him.
When Chuck Cooper goes north, he's learned not to bother to ask for grits.
So the power of trailers.
That looks quirky.
Because as I was putting that together, I was saying, well, rather than making this just a public service announcement, I'm going to rent it and watch it. So I rented it and watched it, and it's 10 times goofier and quirkier and more bizarre. Goes 800 different areas, and you get a little bit of it. But if you're thinking about renting this and you're a Nicolas Cage fan, watch the trailer again because he has this really annoying voice. Now all of his delivery is exactly Nicolas Cage delivery style, but it's in this high-pitched, whiny, nasally voice that I hate to say it. The first half hour was just all the same thing, just him being quirky, him being goofy, in this nasally voice, and I turned it off. So
you bailed.
So I bailed after about half an hour and just thought Army of One needed to be a viewer of none. So by me.
So you'll never know if he caught and captured bin Laden.
Well, it's still on my Amazon account, so maybe I'll go back and watch it, but I doubt it.
Maybe. Speaking of account.
Yes.
What we have following me blabbing is a little clip for an account of the life of the most well-known martial arts superstar Hong Kong ever birthed. It is...
Hong Kong Phooey?
No, he was the number one super guy, though.
Sorry.
Chickie Cha, Chickie Cha. Here we have a TV series, actually. This is a portion of the first or only season of a TV program entitled The Legend of Bruce Lee. Okay.
Yes.
So, what we have here, Welgo USA put this out on DVD.
It's a little bit longer than this trailer.
It's longer than the trailer, to the tune of about 9 hours longer than the trailer. You have the first 10 episodes of this show. They're about an hour apiece. And I believe the show went 30 episodes. So my guess is there will probably be 3 volumes. This is volume 1. So this tells purports to tell the life story of Bruce Lee from being in about 11th grade until his death. This volume 1, goes from his life as a 11th grader in Hong Kong to the point where he goes to America to sort of strike out on his own and the seeds of what he became. Now, I've read books about Bruce Lee, so I know the real story of Bruce Lee.
Okay.
I've seen the biopics of Bruce Lee, so I know the bogus stories of Bruce Lee. And for whatever reason, this opportunity to tell his story factually with the support of his family and over the course of 30 hours in depth chose to also tell the bogus story of Bruce Lee. It's not very accurate from what I've seen in this. Again, this is just the first 10 episodes.
Right.
It's produced for Hong Kong TV. It leads toward the melodrama a lot. It's shot on video, so as a lot of Hong Kong TV drama is still. That's really unusual. Here, the only thing shot on video that's a drama would be a soap opera.
Right.
So this feels like a soap opera. It kind of plays like one at
Interesting.
times, too.
Okay.
To me, the way I grew up watching things, I equate shot on video with cheap.
Right.
So watching this and I saw shot on video, immediately my head was like, well, this is just cheap. It is well produced in terms of technical aspects of it. The fight scenes are well done.
Okay, that was my next question.
That's
for
my
you.
thing about these are the fight scenes, and they know to whom they are trying to sell this product. So there's a lot of fight scenes in this, and that's the thing about. I mean, my understanding of Bruce Lee is that he would get into brawls in the street and everything, but it wasn't like what I think of as the bad or good '70s kung fu movies, which are, what, you hurt my brother, I'm gonna fight you, and you get done fighting, and whew, what? You hurt my mother, I'm going to fight. And I've seen some of those lately.
Right.
So this kind of feels like that. My biggest beef with this, which could be attractive or not attractive depending on your taste, is that it is set in the early 60s in Hong Kong. And they don't do a whole lot to make it feel like the early 60s in Hong Kong. Like the actor who plays Bruce Lee looks a lot like him, and that's really cool.
Okay.
But he has a beef with some bully in a gymnasium, and the guy's wearing like modern day basketball clothes.
Really?
And I'm looking at the logo. I'm like, is that a modern Nike logo? I mean,
Right.
Like so the hairstyles look like now. Most of the clothes look like now. There are occasional establishing shots that are wide shots where you can see contemporary vehicles going back and forth. At one point, the mind-blowing part of this thing for me, Bruce Lee's invited to a friend's house. They sit in this guy's living room. They're looking at a color TV. In early 60s Hong Kong.
Right.
Didn't exist. On top of the TV...
And it's like a widescreen. It's like 28
No, it's not HD.
It's not that bad?
It's like a TV that's, too new. And then on top of that TV is a VCR.
Yeah.
Didn't exist in early 60s Hong Kong. And they watch a color videotape of a TV boxing match between two guys that looks like it was from around when it was shot. And I'm just like, so is this about Bruce Lee, or is this a guy who's like spiritually following in his footsteps? It kept taking me out of it because the anachronisms were like, it's like they weren't even trying. I'm like, wow. And beyond knowing that it's not really following the story too accurately, the broad strokes of the story here are that it's a young Bruce Lee, and you're seeing him learn the various fighting styles to overcome obstacles in his life. And you see the path, in theory, the path he took to inventing Cih.U.D, which was his own martial arts style, which was a combination of all kinds of styles. I believe it stood for style with no style or something like that. Being adaptable was the idea with that. So it's an interesting idea. So you get to see these various styles and his training on these styles, and then him taking down the bad guys and learning and moving on. But to me, it just felt like a really long version of one of the bogus biopics that took the seeds of truth and just tried to cram in as many fight scenes as possible because it's Bruce Lee. You want to see him kick somebody's ass.
That's right.
So I thought it was really pretty bad. I found it entertaining because I was laughing at it because of the anachronisms, and I was like, look at all the modern hairstyles. Oh, look at that guy's watch. Is somebody going to whip out an iPod at some point or their phone? But the action was well rendered. At one point, there's a guy who's wearing one of these modern, like, fake distressed T-shirts that had the Woodstock logo, like the Woodstock concert logo, which wouldn't happen
before
for
Woodstock
years.
even existed.
And I'm just like,
yeah.
oh, what is going on here? So anyway, if you are very interested in Bruce Lee and you don't care about accuracy, if you want to see some foo shot on video, which is kind of unusual these days, or if you want to see a guy who looks really a lot like Bruce Lee watching a color videotape in somebody's house in the early 60s, then The Legend of Bruce Lee just might be for you. I'm presuming that if sales go well enough, we'll put out the rest of these, and it's, like I said, it should be about 3 sets.
Right.
So, moving on.
Well, there is some fighting going on. Terrence Howard co-stars with Thomas Hayden Church in a story about it's Boxing Week here on the $1 Million Movie, I think. Thomas Hayden Church plays a homeless man who is hired by a bunch of kids in the neighborhood to fight other homeless people. It's a strange one. He happens to be the cardboard boxer.
It's just part of the action with the world's only boxing robots, the Rock'em Sock'em Robots by Marx.
That looks heavy.
It does, but I like Hayden Church. Is he strong enough to carry a film? I'm not quite sure. I think he's done well. I mean, he was terrific in. It wasn't Sliders. What was the
Spider-Man 3?
Spider-Man 3. Well, he was perfectly cast
Sideways.
as the Sideways.
Yeah.
He was perfectly cast as the Sandman. So I did enjoy him in that. But yeah, he was terrific in Sideways. But even that kind of a supportive role. This one looks pretty heavy and kind of solid. It was, for me, it was between Cardboard Boxer and Army of One. I made the wrong choice. So I'll probably go back and watch this because I do like Hayden Church.
Which is our roundabout way of saying we didn't watch
see it.
this one.
Yep.
Sorry. This looks like it is potentially inspired by the reprehensible series of video releases of the early 90s entitled Bum Fights.
Yes.
Early to mid 90s, where some really classy dudes would go into the inner city and pay homeless guys to fight each other. And then they'd videotape it and sell them. That was really classy. So, speaking of classy and the inner city and homeless people and all kinds of things that go bump in the night, we have a new release of a film from 1984, 85-ish, 5-ish Finkel, new to you if you haven't seen it before. What are you afraid of when you are in New York City around about that time and things are going bump underground and pulling you down through manhole covers and holes in your basement walls into the never underground cataclysmic catacombs and things like that? Well, you are probably afraid of C.H.U.D.
This rabbit reacts calmly to petting and tapping.
So not the greatest looking trailer.
That trailer in no way represents what the video
right,
looks
exactly.
like.
But that's what this is, an Arrow release, right?
Yes.
And if there's anything that I can say about Arrow, when they put something out, they do it properly, and it looks great.
That's a baseline for Arrow.
Yes.
It's almost like we don't even need to say it when we talk about these movies. But this is a movie that I remember seeing originally. USA Network used to play it a lot.
Yep.
Actually, I have a DVD copy of Commander USA hosting this movie.
I think I've got the VHS of C.H.U.D. still.
The VHS was the way I'd seen it previously, and it was dark.
Yeah.
And a lot of it takes place in the subway underground at night, and that's cool. But it was like murky dark, like not much detail, and a lot of it was lost in the darkness.
The copy you had, okay.
The copy I used to have. So it's interesting. I mean, the new Arrow transfer, it looks great, but it still retains the gritty and the grimy and the dark quality of it. So it's not like candy colors and oh wow, it's a shiny happy C.H.U.D. It's the same dark, dirty, dingy, gross, and ugly C.H.U.D. that it always was.
Right.
But there's more sharpness in it. You can greater appreciate the creature effects because what you have here, these are guys in suits.
Yeah.
These mutated. Who knows what they are? Watch the movie and find out. So you have basically John Hurd as a New York City photographer, and Daniel Stern are the two big name stars in this film. And and a very tiny cameo by John Goodman, a pre-famed John Goodman as a cop.
Oh my God, yeah, you're right.
Toward the end,
a
cop in a diner. It's very brief, but it's clearly John Goodman. These two guys who are investigating the disappearances of homeless people or people who live underground and homeless people in general in New York. And it's a typical, nobody wants to believe them, what's going on, there's maybe a cover-up going on, and these guys work to uncover the truth before they and everybody else get swallowed up.
And for those in our audience who are dying to know, for what does C.H.U.D. stand?
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
There you go, very
I
good.
remember that from the TV ads when I was a kid.
do too.
And it's just such a funny, lunk-headed C.H.U.D. Hey, C.H.U.D., how you doing? So, being that it's Arrow Video, as we say, it looks amazing.
Yep.
There is tons of extras. It's actually a 2-disc set. What I watched was the integral version, which is a slightly longer cut that is available. There's the theatrical cut as well.
Right.
The disc with the integral version has all the extras, so it's 2 audio commentaries, one with cast and crew and one with the composer, and I think it's an isolated music score on that track. Then you have the designer of the creatures, has like 20 minutes talking about it. You have a really cool tour of the New York City locations as they are now, which is amazing that almost all of them are still there. Like they're going to the exact same manhole covers, and you're like, they haven't even paved over this. This is exactly the same. I'm a big fan of that kind of thing, so that was neat. And you cut between, shot of the movie and shot as it looks now.
Right.
It's just loaded with extras. If everything you ever wanted to know about C.H.U.D. but were afraid to ask is there. It's a fun, at its heart, it's just a fun throwback monster movie. I mean, it's basically like a 50s monster movie with gore because it was done in the 80s. And it's interesting to see how in the early 80s you still had monster movies. We've pretty much lost that. We don't get monster movies anymore.
Yep.
We get slasher movies or we get supernatural movies with a lot of CGI, but we don't just get creatures anymore. And this was, when creature effects were still physical creature effects. So you have guys in suits and rubber monsters and claws and blood spattering on the walls and things like that. No CGI blood in this. They go for it. So it was not a film I was a big fan of earlier in my life.
Really? Okay, because I was.
Were you?
Yeah, I very much enjoyed
Cinemaniacs?
C.H.U.D. Absolutely.
Seeing it again, I liked it a lot more this time.
Okay,
It had much more of a sense of fun than I remembered. And when the attacks happen, they're swift and brutal and carnage filled. So I had a good time with C.H.U.D.
Good. Congratulations, you joined the club.
So that's all that we officially watched for the show today.
Yep.
Wow. Was there anything else you would care to discuss?
No, I watched Game 7 again, so that's about it.
Reliving the thrills.
Yep, absolutely. It's funny how, like you folks care, but diehard Cub fan that I am, it's funny how, because those folks who did watch it, Game 7 went on, it was rain delayed and everything like that. It went on until about 2 o'clock in the morning here on the East Coast. And it was funny how little I remember of the 10th inning, because I'm watching it again, I'm going, he had 2 strikes on him, oh my goodness. So that was funny. So
it's like Finding Dory. It's new to you all over
Exactly,
again.
it is. So
I watched a whole bunch of other movies that I will not talk about. So there. You don't always need to know about this stuff. Next week, we will be covering 2 new in the theater at the very least, and at least 2 on video. So there. So and then so that's 4. So then maybe 12 others we'll just tell you about that we haven't seen.
Right.
Yeah. So until then, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are the
Cinemaniacs.